All right, I've got inFamous here, and I just got through with the first one. I haven't played the second one yet, or I haven't played um, what is that, Festival of Blood yet either. But and I know this is an old game by today's standards, so this gen, has progressed. Games have, you know, most of them have risen in quality as the years have went on. And since this was like an '09 release or something like that, it's not up to the standards set by certain open world games of that have been released recently, like Far Cry 3, like Red Dead Redemption. Games that have come out since inFamous have really pushed the genre forward. Although I'm kind of taking a stance of, how did this game, age, and basically what did I see, or what did I like, what did I not like about the game, within in context of what's out now. So is this game worth going back and playing right now? Um, One thing I do want to do is change up the format a little bit. Generally, I have a very casual review system. I just talk about a game very casually. This time, I broke it down into brief category or very vague categories, points that I want to hit, but I'm going to still do it with a very casual tone. I made a little list here. I want to cover like the open world. I want to cover art style, graphics, presentation. I want to cover superpowers, gameplay slash difficulty. I want to touch upon the morality system. I want to touch upon character development, raw fun factor, and replay value. So those are the main factors or main points I want to hit in this review. Those are all the main things I could think of when I played this game that need to be touched upon. So if I missed something, you could always let me know. Ask me a question in the comments, but I'm sure you could find this information if you really wanted to see it. But for the sake of improving the content of my reviews, if you have a recommendation, I always like to hear them. But anyway, without further ado, or in other words, without further bullshit, let's go ahead and talk about the game. First off, it takes place in an open world environment, similar to Grand Theft Auto. The mini map looks very much like Grand Theft Auto's does. It's an open world environment split into 3 islands, much like Grand Theft Auto. You can only play when you first start the game. You can only play on the first island, and eventually, once you progress through the story, you can get to the second. You could get, and then finally to the third. The second and third have more stronger enemies and more of them, respectively. The second one is slightly harder and has more enemies than the first, and then eventually the third one is the most challenging of the 3. And this, basically holds up. The first one does feel very, very easy, and I thought, well, if this is what the entire game's going to be like, then, I got this in the bag. This is far too easy. And I was playing it on hard. And eventually it did get more challenging. After, once I got to the third island, I actually changed it down to normal because I am a little pansy. No, because I felt that getting that hard trophy, the gold trophy, wasn't worth some of the replays and learning curve that I had to go through in each mission. I didn't feel like it was worth it, and it just took a lot more time than I was willing to put into the game. I didn't enjoy it enough to sit there and grind each mission on hard. But that's not to say I didn't have a small amount of fun with it, but I'll get to that later anyway. Exploration is handled in the game pretty well. Your character is very fast, and you can climb on pretty much anything you can see, like Spider-Man. One thing I did not like about the climbing is that you can pretty much just, like, if you're trying to climb a building, you could pretty much just straight up jump up it. Like, you don't have to, like, strategically find ways to climb each building, like in Assassin's Creed. Maybe you can't go up a certain area, but you have to find some part of this, like, tower or building that you can go up, and you have to, like, shimmy and just find the proper way up. This game doesn't have a whole lot of that. You basically just jump up and, without much consequence. You basically just easily traverse any size building by continuously hitting the jump button and forward to climb it. So it felt a little bit in that respect. But you are able to move very fast and climb any building, and basically traverse the whole world vertically, which is really cool. And it adds to that superhero thematic style I think that the game is going for pretty well. It's all right. It could be done better, but like I said, it is done reasonably well. Side quests in the game, of course, as with many open world games, it does have side quests. The side quests are an extreme weak point, I think, for the game. They're very redundant. There's about maybe like 6 or 7 different types of side quests that you can do, and they're all very small. They have no bearing on the story. Some of them affect your morality meter, but they don't feel very much different than a normal mission and stuff like that. Some of them are just straight up linear, kill all these guys, and some of them are just like, get from point A to point B in a time limit. And what these side quests usually do is after you complete them, they clear out an area of the map and say enemies cannot respawn here unless you're doing a main story mission in that area. Of course, they're going to place enemies there anyway, but generally, when you're out and about exploring the city, if you already did a side mission in that area, enemies will not respawn there, so you can pretty much freely move about that small area without getting attacked and stuff, so that you can, earn collectibles pretty easily and stuff like that. I mean, it took inspiration, obviously, from other games that have done it, Assassin's Creed, and there's plenty of others that do it nowadays. I don't know about how many developers, use this idea back when this game came out, but obviously we've seen this a ton since. So yeah, you go and do a side mission simply for the sake of clearing out an area, and the side missions are incredibly generic, have no influence or tie-in to the main story, and eventually I just got tired of doing them all. At first I said I was going to complete every side mission and clear out every area, much as I do in other games, but they were really dull, repetitive, small time, and monotonous. And I think it was a huge weak point for the game. It is nice that they included side quests, but we expect them from an open world game like this, and they are overall very weak. Let's see, what else did I want to mention? Okay, well, the art style. The art style is it's got a realistic look to the graphics, but the overall presentation is very comic book like. That is what they were going for. They're going for you as a person with superpowers in kind of a comic book, world. And this is, presented through cutscenes just as well. It has a very graphic novel approach to the cutscenes, and overall it does feel pretty much like a comic book game. Like some of the silly things that you can pull off because you're a superhero, and stuff like that. It hits upon those things pretty well on all cylinders. So it does have a genuine comic book feel to it, even though the graphics are more, they're not necessarily like cartoony. They have a more real style look to them, but the color and everything, the way it's done in Empire City, it does definitely give it this comic book feel. And they did this with some amount of success, so I can genuinely say that it does feel like you're kind of playing a graphic novel as a superhero, so that's pretty cool. The graphics themselves, they are pretty technically impressive. For a game that came out in, I don't know, I think it was 09. I keep saying 09, could have been earlier, could have been later. I think it was at least 09, I don't think it was later than that. But yeah, for a game that came out back then, it does have some pretty impressive graphics. And I'm glad that with this being a PS3 exclusive, that they were able to take advantage of the hardware at such an early stage in order to make the graphics look as good as they do. Now, the character models themselves could use a lot of work. They don't show a whole lot of personality. Basically, they don't ever really do too many close-ups on, the facial animations. They always use these like still graphic novel images in the cutscenes. And while they do an okay job of conveying emotion, they're always still images. So take it for what it's worth. You're not going to see a whole lot of facial animation, and you're not going to see a whole lot of characterization through close-ups of the characters in the graphics engine, but it serves the purpose of the game. it does have a more realistic look to the game for something that's going for that comic book feel. And they're technically overall pretty impressive for an early open world PS3 exclusive. So I was happy about that. They didn't take any shortcuts, I don't think, in terms of the graphics, and it shows. They're pretty good. Um, let's see. Oh, okay. Well, one of the main staples of the infamous franchise, obviously, is the fact that you have superpowers, and man, there's quite a bit to say here. Your superpowers are basically you control lightning, at least in the first one. I think in the second one, you can either get fire or ice, depending on your morality meter. And your superpowers, you can level them up. And to what degree you can level certain powers up depends on your morality meter. And this, I think, was a very controversial design decision because well, I kind of want to touch upon the morality system a little bit later, but they give your character superpowers. So to give you the ability to traverse the open world more freely, and basically to give you an excuse to play the game with a more vertical, give the game a more sense of verticality, and basically make it fun to play. They throw you in this city and they give you a bunch of superpowers, and you're throwing cars, and you're throwing grenades and blowing up basically gas stations, and there's just explosions and lightning flying everywhere. The superpowers themselves are pretty cool. I think they could have added a little more, made the leveling up system a little bit more deep than they did, but then again, I only played through the game once, so I played as a good character. If I played as an evil character, the powers may have been very well quite different. So they do give you some options. You're going to generally get most of the same powers, whether you're good or evil anyway, but they do feel very satisfying, and I was happy with the overall gameplay mechanics with your superpowers. There are some that are obviously way more better than others. Certain ones I barely ever used, whereas others, once I upgraded them, I basically leaned on them significantly. But I could see where somebody might prefer you having a certain play style with certain powers over others. And I just found a play style that I liked within the mechanics, and I stuck to it. There's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. So, yeah, the superpowers are handled relatively well. As far as the gameplay in terms of difficulty goes, now the game doesn't start off all that hard at all. I couldn't imagine starting the game on normal because it would seem like the first and the beginning of the second islands, or pretty much past the second island, wouldn't be overall very hard at all. I'm not sure how the difficulty scales between normal and hard, but I played most of the game on hard. Once I got to the last island, like I said, I did change my difficulty back to normal because I didn't want to go through the nonsensical grind of dying a lot and just learning every encounter by heart and where the enemies spawn and whatnot. For an open world game, the missions are very linear. If you have to replay a mission, you can start to predict where enemies come from. And it's kind of disappointing that a lot of the missions do take place in sewers. So you can pretty well imagine how linear and corridor shooter type of game that becomes when you close this open world game into a sewer. So you're basically going from hallway to hallway, killing enemies, and it doesn't really take too big advantage of a lot of the powers that you have when you're in these sewers, because you can't just like be flinging cars and stuff at them. You're basically relying upon your straight up twitch shooter skills, which is a little disappointing. And even when you are in the open world, the missions do feel very linear. If you travel a little bit too far outside of the mission zone, it will fail you. So it gets rid of that sense of approach, as choose how you want to go about a mission. It basically doesn't really have that a whole lot, and it'll basically give you a lot of missions give you some sort of advantage for sticking to one place. Like you'll get infinite electricity recharge if you stay in one place the entire mission, and that's kind of lame, I thought, honestly. Some missions are a lot better than others in terms of letting you explore the city and go about it your own unique way, but many of them are very linear. The morality system is another there's one thing that I really had a kind of a problem with. I don't think the morality system overall matters at all. Like, really, and the only thing that truly matters with the morality system is what powers you do and don't get, or are able to level up differently based on your morality. A lot of the missions themselves require either action or inaction. Maybe your good is to go out of your way and do something good for the citizens, and maybe your evil action is basically just not doing anything. You'll see a lot of things like this throughout the game, and it just feels a little bit cheesy, whether or not you're going out of your way to be good or going out of your way to be evil and be a douchebag. I think that is a little bit, faulty design. I wish they would have really touched upon this morality system a little bit better. Also, characters in the game do not react to whether you are good or evil almost at all. There might be like one small NPC that says, "Oh, you're good" or "You're evil," but basically, everybody from the main story will not react genuinely to the morality choices you have made. They're very generic responses to try to, play into either or. Like your girlfriend, for example, whether or not you're basically the archangel and you do everything super, super good, she'll keep your distance and distrust you for a long period of time, even if you're super, super good. Whereas if you're evil, she'll still end up eventually wanting to get back together with you. So that felt a little bit unrealistic. There's another character called the TV Jacker or something like that, and he basically discounts every action everything good you've done, and he tries to justify it by saying, it wasn't this guy, or he always wants to blame you for everything that's going wrong, whether you actually helped the citizens of the city or you hurt them. So it just feels a little bit fake. So in the context of the story, everything seems so fake and doesn't matter whatsoever. Also, if you want to kind of role play in this game, say you want to, maybe make your character like, sort of that shade of gray area. Maybe you are going for that survival of the fittest. You only help people when you have something to gain or when it benefits your cause. Or maybe you only hurt people when you also have something to gain from it. Uh, there's not a whole lot of that in the story. And also, the game basically punishes you for playing a neutral character. If you take a neutral stance of neutrality, you basically won't be able to level up any of your major powers in the game. So, unlike in a game like KOTOR or something where neutrality is somewhat of a legitimate play style, eventually, I guess, in some point in the game, they basically make you choose, but you could basically play most of the game legitimately neutral, and this game does not really allow for that. It will punish you for doing so, and it will make it a lot harder for you in the long run, and it won't have any bearing on the overall story at all. You really gotta, be a hardcore role player to get anything out of, the morality system whatsoever. It just feels pretty fake and tacked on, honestly. And it's so much missed potential, I think, in my opinion. It almost feels as if the game could easily have done without it, and just make you choose your power-ups based on which ladder you want to go down, basically doing a talent point system and progressing up one ladder versus another. And it could have easily done that without any moral choices, because the choices of morality, for the most part, are very, very just artificial, and they just feel a little bit, either you're going out of your way to be, a douche, or you're going out of your way to be super, super good. And it just feels so artificial and fake, and the whole game could have easily done without it. Maybe 2 got a little bit better, I don't know, but 1 stands to improve a lot in that regard. The character development is overall pretty darn weak. Like I said, because of how the morality affects the story very, very little, you don't feel as though your character is uniquely yours. Characters will generically respond to you one way or another, depending whether you're evil or good. So you don't really feel like... And your character also responds generically to other people. So sometimes if you're playing a really nice and good character for the people, he'll randomly say things that are totally douchebaggish, and you'll be like, man, like that is not the character I would, wanted to be when I chose to play this game. And overall, it feels a little bit nonsensical sometimes the way you interact with other characters. Based on this morality system, like I said, they really missed the mark, and a lot of missed potential. Like the morality should have played such a bigger role in character development than it did. But it just feels like a huge letdown, I think, in that regard. There are other characters in the game, of course. Zeke is probably the only major character worth noting, and while his character is developed a little bit, he very much feels like a generic comic book type of character. So he remains kind of static in that regard. I think that they want him to play out this archetypical, comic book type of cheesy friend, and he doesn't develop all that well. I mean, I guess there is a small degree of development to his character, but honestly, it's nothing you would want to write home about. They do have some character developmental moments, but they're very far and few between. So it's definitely not a pro of the game. Probably leans more on the side of a con. The overall fun factor of the game, there are moments where you will be kind of on the edge of your seat. You'll have some excitement out of the game. A lot of it's just overall flashiness. They wanted to give people this ooh ah oh snap type of stuff where you're able to just fling cars. They basically said, we want to throw you into an open world like GTA and give people. We want to up the fun factor of being able to, basically play around in a city and do whatever you want in a city. We want to up that fun factor of doing stuff like that by giving you superpowers and being able to give you the ability to traverse the world so easily and jump around and do all kinds of cool tricks. But this sentiment wears off very, very quickly because the side missions are very uninteresting. All the NPCs are very shallow. The world has somewhat of a sense of life due to their art style and presentation, but the character development and side quests, I think, sabotage that sense of life to the setting. So they kind of cancel each other out in a sense. So what you're left with is a very average, fun factor, and basically it's an okay game. I would say overall the game is slightly above average, but it's not, not anything to write home about. Like I said, the replay value, it does have some degree of that. It has no multiplayer, so you could pretty much get that idea out of your head in terms of replay, but it does have a lot of collectibles. Going around and collecting every blast shard would probably take you a long time, and it seemed like to be kind of a pain in the ass to me. There's a ton of them. I managed to get over 75% of them because that trophy dinged for me, I think. It was 70, no, maybe it was over just 50%. I have no idea. It's hard for me to remember what percentage exactly of the blast shards I managed to get, but they are all over the place, and you can often get sidetracked by seeing one on your mini-map and trying to collect it, and then seeing another on your mini-map and trying to collect it, and this can keep going on, and eventually at some point you're like, I just got to progress in the game. Like, there's so many of them, and they do have a purpose. The collectibles mostly do have a purpose. Either they tell a story or they enhance your health and your electricity, whatever. So they do have a purpose, but there's so many of them, and sometimes it feels like there's such a little reward for getting them all that I don't really particularly care to go back and collect them all, but for completionists, this could be a pretty cool factor to consider. So there are a lot of collectibles, and there are reasons to go back if you didn't complete all the side missions, even though I found them very, very dull. They do have these things for you to go back into the game and do. So overall, what do I think of the game? I would probably say it's slightly above average. On my personal scale, that would be a 6 out of 10. On some people, it would be more like an 7.5. some people consider 7 average, like a C in school, like a 70%. I personally think 5 out of 10, or a 5 out of 10 is average. So I'm going to give this game slightly above. Therefore, on my scale, it would be a 6. That's the scale I tend to prefer. Other people generally like, you know, the 7 as average. So in that case, I would probably give it a 7.5. The reason being is that while the overall the powers feel pretty fun, the world is, you know, it serves their comic book style pretty well. They accomplished that with a tremendous amount. I wouldn't say tremendous, but they accomplished that with a reasonable amount of success. I think the side quests and the character development kind of sabotage, and the morality system in terms of the character development especially kind of sabotage their own vision, I think. And it definitely, I think, requires a lot of work in the character development and morality aspects. Hopefully 2 does it a little bit better. I've heard that it kind of doesn't, which honestly, that really sucks, because if anything would want to make me play the sequel, it would be that. And if that is left out of the game, then I'm probably not too inclined to play the sequel. Honestly, I'm not very excited to play the sequel very much at all, if that gives you any indication of how good this game is or isn't. This actually right here is the inFamous collection. It comes with inFamous 1, 2, and Festival of Blood. I think that Festival of Blood might have been like user-created content that Sucker Punch thought was really good, and they basically put that into the inFamous 2 world, which is really cool, because the variety in inFamous 1 was definitely lacking in terms of the side quests and things that you could do. So if they added user-generated content, then that could be a major plus, I think, for inFamous 2, as long as you make it like a side note that it is, you know, paid DLC or something like that. So maybe eventually I'll get around to playing inFamous 2, but honestly, I'm not really looking forward to it. The series does have a lot of potential. I think Second Son looks like it might be taking a really cool direction, but in terms of the first game and how it held up, I would have to say, on my scale, it is a 6 out of 10, which means slightly above average. The overall game is pretty enjoyable, but it does really have its dull and slow moments. So take it for what it's worth. I hope some people actually catch this review. If you want to rate the video, that would be awesome. You can give it a thumbs up, but if not, you can give it a thumbs down. Just rate the video. And if you're feeling generous, subscribe, or please comment. I love comments. I love feedback. That's probably my favorite thing about the YouTube community. Subscribers and ratings are second in my mind to comments, but of course I always appreciate subscriptions and ratings, don't get me wrong. So with that being said, this video has run a bit long, so I guess I will say peace and take it easy.